The snow fell in a relentless, suffocating blanket, each flake a tiny shard of ice against the windshield. Sarah squinted, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, trying to discern the barely visible outline of the road ahead. She'd made this trek countless times, a seasoned winter hiker seeking the solitude of the wilderness. But this blizzard was different. It had descended without warning, a furious, white-out squall that now held her captive somewhere deep within the Canadian Rockies. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died with a final, defeated shudder. Darkness, thick and absolute, swallowed her. Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at her. She was miles from the nearest town, and her cell phone had lost signal an hour ago. The heater, now useless, quickly gave way to the bone-deep chill seeping into the car. Hours bled into an eternity of shivering desperation. Then, a faint glimmer in the distance. A light? Hope surged, a fragile, desperate thing. Leaving a note on the dashboard, she bundled herself in every layer she had, grabbed her emergency kit, and stepped out into the howling abyss. The wind immediately stole her breath, whipping snow into a blinding frenzy. Every step was a battle, sinking knee-deep into the pristine, deadly powder. It took what felt like an age, her lungs burning, muscles screaming, before the faint light coalesced into the unmistakable shape of a cabin. Old, weathered wood, dark against the endless white. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, a beacon of life in this frozen wasteland. Relief, so potent it made her knees weak, wash over her. She stumbled towards it, pounding on the heavy wooden door, her voice hoarse with cold. No answer. She tried the latch. Unlocked. A wave of trepidation, cold as the air outside, washed over her, but the promise of warmth was too strong to resist. The interior was dark, save for the dying embers in a stone fireplace. The air was frigid, yet not as biting as outside. Dust motes danced in the sparse light filtering through the small, grimy windows. It was rustic, sparsely furnished. A rough-hewn table, 2 chairs, a sagging cot in the corner, and a rocking chair facing the door. A layer of dust coated everything, suggesting abandonment, yet the embers in the fireplace, no matter how faint, contradicted that. Someone had been here recently, or was still here. She built up the fire, coaxing life back into the coals with kindling she found stacked neatly beside the hearth. As warmth slowly seeped into the cabin, she began to notice details that tightened the knot of unease in her stomach. On the walls, crude, childlike drawings adorned the bare wood. Stick figures with oversized, hollow eyes, reaching hands, and stark, jagged lines that depicted something monstrous lurking in the shadows. They weren't charming or innocent. They were unsettling, imbued with a primal fear. On the rocking chair, a small hand-knitted doll sat propped up, its button eyes staring blankly towards the door. It was old, its yarn faded, but its presence felt disturbingly deliberate. Sarah tried to ignore it, focusing instead on a small leather-bound journal she found tucked beneath a loose floorboard near the cot. Its pages were brittle, filled with elegant looping script that quickly devolved into frantic, almost illegible scrawls. The entries began mundanely enough, detailing a solitary winter stay, a longing for peace. But then the tone shifted. "The quiet is too loud," one entry read. "I hear things in the snow, whispers the wind cannot carry." Another, dated only a few days prior, sent a shiver down her spine. "They watch from the tree line, always watching. Their eyes are like slivers of ice." And then, in a desperate, sprawling hand, "The hunger, it knows I'm here. It wants in. I can't sleep. The doll, it keeps looking." Sarah slammed the journal shut. The doll, she glanced at it, and for a terrifying second, its button eyes seemed to have shifted, now directly focused on her. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She was alone, isolated, in a place steeped in palpable dread. The fire crackled, but the warmth felt illusory. Outside, the blizzard still raged, a monstrous white curtain that sealed her off from the world. Then she heard it, a soft scraping sound against the outside wall, like something heavy being dragged through the snow. She froze, straining her ears. It stopped. Silence, absolute and profound, descended, broken only by the frantic beat of her own pulse. She tried to rationalize it, a branch scraping, an animal, but the journal's words echoed in her mind. They watch from the tree line, always watching. Minutes crawled by. The scraping sound started again, closer this time, moving towards the front of the cabin. She huddled by the fireplace, clutching a heavy iron poker, her breath ragged. Through a gap in the worn curtains, she peered out. Nothing, just the swirling vortex of white. But then, a shadow, impossibly tall and gaunt, flickered past the small window. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, a sinuous grace that was terrifyingly inhuman. She ducked back, pressing herself against the cold stone, tears stinging her eyes. It was real. Whatever it was out there, and it was circling. A faint creak emanated from the front door. Sarah looked up, her blood turning to ice. The heavy wooden door, which she had pushed firmly shut, was now ajar by a few inches, a sliver of darkness framed by the blinding white outside. A gust of icy wind, smelling of pine and something else, something ancient and unholy, snaked into the cabin. She didn't think, she acted. With a scream trapped in her throat, she burst through the half-open door, fueled by a primal terror. The blizzard hit her like a physical blow, but she didn't care. She ran, blindly, falling, scrambling, driven by the horrifying image of the shadow and the doll's unblinking eyes. She reached her car, fumbling with the frozen lock, tearing the door open. Her hands shook as she jammed the key into the ignition, praying. The engine sputtered, coughed, and this time, miraculously, caught. She put the car in reverse, spinning the wheels in the deep snow, not daring to look back at the dark shape of the cabin receding into the white chaos. She drove, not knowing where she was going, only that she had to get away. The image of the open door and the silent watcher forever seared in her mind. She made it to a remote gas station hours later, numb and hypothermic. She never returned to the mountains, and to this day, the sight of a lone rocking chair makes her heart pound with a terror she thought she had outrun.
The air was crisp, bitingly cold, yet exhilarating. Mark adjusted his backpack, his breath pluming in the frigid air. Beside him, Lisa, David, and Chloe trudged through the pristine snow, their laughter echoing eerily in the vast expanse of the winter forest. It was their annual winter camping trip, a tradition that took them deeper into the untouched wilderness each year, away from the digital hum of the city. This year, they'd chosen a particularly remote section of the Adirondacks, a place known for its ancient pines and almost supernatural quiet. They set up camp by a frozen stream, the only sound the crunch of their boots and the gentle whisper of the wind through the towering trees. The first night was peaceful, almost idyllic. A roaring fire, hot cocoa, and stories under a sky ablaze with stars. But as the hours wore on, a subtle shift occurred. A faint, almost melodic whistling began to drift through the woods. It wasn't the wind, not quite. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a haunting, ethereal tune that prickled the hairs on their arms. Just the wind, playing tricks, David had said, but his voice lacked conviction. The next morning, an unsettling discovery. Around the perimeter of their camp, distinct tracks marred the fresh snow. They were large, too large for a fox or a deer, yet oddly shallow, as if whatever made them was light, almost spectral. And they weren't paw prints. They looked like bare feet, but elongated, with too many toes. Mark, an experienced outdoorsman, had never seen anything like it. He tried to brush it off, suggesting it was some rare, unknown animal, but an undercurrent of unease had settled into the group. That afternoon, while chopping firewood, David vanished. He had just stepped behind a cluster of thick pines, no more than 20 yards from their sight, and simply wasn't there. They called his name, fanned out, searched frantically for hours, but found nothing. No tracks leading away, no signs of a struggle, just an unsettling silence where his presence should have been. The faint whistling sound, which they had dismissed, now returned, louder, more insistent, weaving through the trees like a sinister lullaby. It sounded joyful. Chloe, usually the most boisterous of the group, became withdrawn, her eyes wide and distant. She started humming the whistling tune under her breath, a vacant smile playing on her lips. "He's just playing a trick," she'd murmured as despair gnawed at them. "He'll be back." But the dread in Mark's gut told him otherwise. As dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple, they found David's backpack. It was lying at the base of an ancient, gnarled pine, its straps torn, its contents scattered. On the tree trunk, carved deep into the bark, was a strange symbol, a spiral within an inverted triangle, glowing faintly with an unnatural phosphorescent light. As Lisa reached out to touch it, the whistling grew deafening, seeming to emanate from the very air around them. Chloe, who had been lagging behind, suddenly stood perfectly still, her head cocked, as if listening to something only she could hear. "He's calling," she whispered, and then slowly she began to walk deeper into the forest, towards the source of the whistling. They shouted her name, tried to grab her, but she moved with a strange, otherworldly purpose, a disturbing grace. Her vacant smile widened, and she began to hum the whistling tune, louder now, almost in harmony with the unseen sounds around them. Mark and Lisa exchanged a terrified look. This wasn't their friend anymore. Whatever was in these woods, it had taken David, and now it was claiming Chloe. They had to leave, now. As they frantically packed, their hands trembling, the whistling intensified, joined by a low, guttural growl that reverberated through the ground. From the tree line, a shape emerged. Tall, impossibly thin, its form shrouded in shadow even against the dim light. It moved with a silent, gliding motion. Its head seemed to be perpetually tilted, as if in perpetual listening. Chloe, now standing at the very edge of the tree line, turned back to them, her eyes completely black, devoid of pupils. She waved, a slow, deliberate gesture, and then melted into the darkness of the forest, the whistling tune following her, fading into the distance. Mark grabbed Lisa's hand. "Run!" he screamed. They sprinted, abandoning everything, not daring to look back, their boots crunching desperately on the snow. Behind them, they heard a chorus of high-pitched, mocking laughter, followed by a gut-wrenching scream that was undoubtedly Chloe's. It was cut short, replaced by the relentless, joyful whistling. They ran until their lungs burned, until their legs gave out, until they collapsed, gasping miles from the cursed camp. They never returned, and the forest, for all its beauty, was sealed off by local authorities after several more disappearances that winter. Mark and Lisa bear the scars, the indelible memory of the whistling, and the knowledge that some ancient evils lurk beneath the pristine surface of our world, waiting for the unwary to stray too far into their domain.
The polar night had settled over Research Station Alpha 7 like a suffocating shroud, a perpetual twilight broken only by the searing blue-white glare of the station's exterior lights. Dr. Eleanor Vance, a biologist, shivered, though the internal temperature of the station was a comfortable 22 degrees Celsius. It was the isolation that truly chilled her, the knowledge that for the next 3 months, she, Dr. Ben Carter, a geologist, and Anya Sharma, their tech specialist, were utterly alone, a tiny speck of humanity adrift in a vast, frozen, alien landscape. 600 miles from the nearest human outpost, deep within the Arctic Circle. Their mission? To study subsurface ice formations and their potential for hosting extremophile life. 3 weeks into their rotation, the anomalies began. It started subtly, flickering lights, minor power fluctuations that Anya dismissed as typical cold weather wear and tear on the aging generators. Then, communications with base camp became intermittent, eventually dying out altogether. Just the solar flare, probably, Ben had offered, but the worry lines on his face betrayed his forced optimism. Eleanor noticed the seismic equipment, usually a symphony of subtle rumblings, was now producing strange rhythmic patterns too regular to be natural tectonic shifts. Anya, meticulously scanning the ice depths, reported unusual energy signatures she couldn't identify.
The real terror began when the psychological effects of the isolation started to manifest. Insomnia plagued them all. Vivid, disturbing dreams bled into waking hours. Ben swore he saw shadows moving in the periphery of his vision. Anya started to talk to herself, whispering about shapes in the ice. Eleanor, initially resistant to the paranoia, found herself jumping at every creak of the station, every moan of the wind. The vast, empty landscape outside felt less empty and more watchful. She started to hear faint whispers, not distinct words, but an insistent murmur that seemed to penetrate the thick walls of their isolated haven. One morning, Eleanor discovered a strange black growth in the station's purified water supply. It wasn't algae or any known microbe. It was crystalline, almost geometric in its structure, yet organic. It pulsed faintly, a cold, internal light. She took samples, but her microscope couldn't resolve its structure. It felt wrong, utterly alien. "We shouldn't drink this," she told Ben, her voice barely a whisper. He merely nodded, his eyes unfocused, staring out at the perpetual darkness beyond the reinforced windows. Ben, meanwhile, became obsessed with the sonar readings. He'd spend hours, days hunched over the console, charting a massive, intricate structure beneath thousands of feet of ice. "It's not natural," he'd mutter, his voice raspy. "Too perfect, too vast." He believed it was an ancient, buried city, pre-human, perhaps even pre-life as they knew it. He began to rig up makeshift audio transmitters, hoping to send signals down into the abyssal depths, believing he could communicate with whatever had built it. He started claiming he was receiving responses, faint, almost subliminal echoes that resonated not in his ears, but directly in his mind. Anya's decline was the most rapid and horrifying. She became catatonic, staring at the walls, her lips moving silently, repeating strings of numbers. Then one day she simply stood up, put on her parka, and went out the airlock, without her helmet, without her emergency beacon. They watched through the window, horrified, as she walked purposefully into the blizzard, her form quickly swallowed by the white chaos. Her last words before she stepped out were, "It's beautiful. It's calling me home." They tried to follow, but the storm was too fierce, the risk too great. They were reduced to watching her silhouette vanish, knowing they had signed her death warrant by inaction. Eleanor started to feel the station itself changing. The air grew inexplicably colder, a chill that defied the thermostats. The metal walls groaned with a deep, resonant hum, not the usual sound of structural fatigue, but something alive. The purified air tasted metallic, like ozone and something else, something she couldn't place but instinctively knew was wrong. She found herself whispering too, not words but fragments of the omnipresent murmur she heard, a language not meant for human mouths. Ben, driven by a manic fervor, was now carving the same symbols Anya had seen on her screens on the station's walls, chanting in a language Eleanor didn't recognize, his eyes alight with a terrifying alien understanding. He believed the structure beneath the ice was awakening, that it was a consciousness, and that they were now part of it. He tried to stop Eleanor when she attempted to override the communication blackout, fearing she would disrupt his connection. He was stronger than she remembered, his grip like iron. "Don't," he hissed, his face contorted. "It wants us here. It needs us." Through a small, reinforced viewport in the geology lab, Eleanor saw it. A vast, impossibly faint silhouette moving sluggishly beneath miles of ice. Not a structure, but a colossal, living entity, its outlines shifting and reforming like liquid shadow. It dwarfed the entire station. A massive primordial eye, like a swirling vortex of deep-sea bioluminescence, seemed to turn, slowly, toward their little light. Panic, pure and untainted, seized her. This wasn't a research station anymore. It was a prison, a larder. They weren't studying it, it was studying them. With Ben momentarily distracted by a new signal, Eleanor scrambled for the emergency flare gun, the last resort, the one meant to create a localized distress signal. But she had another idea. The station had an emergency self-destruct mechanism designed to prevent contamination if something went catastrophically wrong with their biological samples. She knew the coordinates. She would trigger it. Better to be insulated than become part of whatever ancient horror had awakened beneath the ice. She aimed the flare gun not at the sky, but at the ceiling, at the central power conduit that ran through the heart of the station. Ben screamed, lunging for her, but she pulled the trigger. The flare erupted, a brilliant, blinding flash, striking the conduit. The station groaned, a sound that was less metal and more like a dying beast. Alarms blared, a cacophony of red lights flashing. The very ground beneath her feet shuddered, and the sound of cracking ice, deep and resonant, filled the air. She hoped it was enough, that the station would collapse, that the ice would bury whatever had stirred. The last thing she saw before the lights went out, before the station tore itself apart, was Ben, his face no longer human, screaming, not at her, but at the retreating shadows beneath the ice, a desperate final plea to an indifferent god. No distress signal was ever received from Station Alpha 7. No wreckage was ever found, only the vast, silent, and eternally cold expanse of the Arctic, holding its ancient, terrible secrets close.